Hello, I am Greg Krish for Art 110, and I'm making a video log on the newest Eva and Franco Matez reading, and I will answer these questions in order, very straightforward way. The Matez stole the entire temporarily available exhibition surface from the website hell.com and republished it on 0.1.org. What do you think they were saying about copyright and ownership as it relates to art and the internet by this action? As I'm going to describe further later, I think a lot of Eva Franco Matez's work um, deals with intellectual property, and this is probably one of the biggest ones since it was just a very, very blatant ripoff. They knew the source, they knew what they were doing and everything. With the Darko Maver stolen pictures, it was a little bit different because I'm not even sure if they knew the sources. They just did an image search and stole them. But they took 26 hours to download the website that was only out for 48 hours. And it was very, very, very blatant plagiarism. What were they saying about copyright and ownership? I think the most important statement they were making on that one was that the internet is kind of a huge democratizing source of information, and that it's really for everyone. It's if you're going to use the internet as a medium for your art, it should be as widely available as possible, as widely available as the internet has to offer, which is basically universally available. So when the hell.com people put up their website for 48 hours only with a password protection on it, it was the opposite of what the internet art should be. It was very limiting to only certain people. So what they did is they stole the website and sent it to as many people as possible to universalize that artwork. So what are the differences between hacktivism and Eva Franco Matez, theft of Hell.com's exhibition? Hacktivism is a much more straightforward form of protest against especially corporations like Disney or political figures. It would be just like activism. It would be making a very blatant statement that is against some kind of existing entity. I feel like Eva Franco's artwork was not something to be used against something else. It was an artwork in itself, inadvertently, well, not inadvertently, but in the process screwing over someone else, and that was screwing over hell.com. But what they were trying to do is make a statement about art more than they were trying to make a statement about politics. My thoughts on their erection of a huge Nike swoosh in Vienna. Was it less offensive after I found out it was art? Well, first off, I didn't find that it was offensive at all. The only issue I had with that artwork is that it wasn't noticeable enough, honestly, because even though it was huge and in a major public place in Vienna, it still had the corporate logos and everything on it, and people wouldn't even realize because they're so used to seeing these icons such as the Nike swoosh that they wouldn't recognize it as art. Even if someone told them, they would assume it's some kind of publicity stunt on the part of the company. And the amount of people that will understand that statement is very, very slim. If anything, there should have been more publicity afterwards that they fueled, which I don't think they fueled a huge amount of publicity after that regarding the fact that it was art. But as far as whether it was a statement against the corporation or art, like I don't care personally. I think it was kind of a cool idea conceptually, but how effective it was, I can't say. I wouldn't have done it. But how is the Second Life avatar like a portrait, and how is it different? The Second Life avatar is a representation of oneself, and a portrait of a Second Life avatar would be a representation of the representation. A portrait is idealized, but it's still a projection of whatever the artist is saying. So if the artist is such as, like, perhaps Rembrandt looking at a person, he might idealize their facial features or add a monkey where there was no monkey in the first place. But it's not the same as a portrait of a Second Life avatar, even though it is an idealization, because a Second Life avatar is an idealization of oneself first off, and then the portrait would be an idealization of an idealization. So it's one step further removed. The portraits that are used as examples in the book are one of the galleries was 13 most beautiful avatars. So if you're finding beauty in avatars, it's trying to find art in something that is kind of art in the first place. So it's a second representation of that artwork. What types of concerns are the artists raising in synthetic performances? Synthetic performances was the chapter that I had the most trouble understanding, simply because I don't understand performance art in the first place very well. But from what I understood, what they were trying to do is make the artwork more accessible. When they're trying to, when the original performance artist is trying to make a statement, it's very fleeting and very limited to the amount of audience members that they have at the time. And someone even stumbling across that artwork, for instance, witnessing a performance art in public, which is the point of performance art, that person might not be able to register what they're seeing in the same way that they would after watching it on Second Life, where they know what it is. They know it's performance art, and they know it's a representation of an existing performance art. And how does it function differently when the participant is aware of the historical precedent? That's what I just explained. It's more accessible in the sense that they have more of an opportunity to think it through. And in that sense, to me, it's kind of a watered down version of performance art. But again, it's not something that I particularly understand the art of in the first place, so that's not going to be my best commentary. What is the Matez's art about? Are there any themes that unite all their projects? To me, the Matez art is primarily about intellectual property and like and representations of things. In that sense, I mean, it's not art, but it's a secondary form of art that comes from other art, kind of like collage, but on much larger and more three-dimensional scales. And I would say that is the theme, because with Darko Maver, they're finding pictures, and then with the Second Life, they're taking pictures of avatars, and it's all kind of stealing from other people, and that's the intellectual property aspect. And the other aspect of it is that you're never quite looking at the original. And what is the meaning of flogging a dead horse? That one had a lot of meaning to me, just because I was already familiar with the Sex Pistols album, and Flogging a Dead Horse was a very interesting album because it was created after the Sex Pistols had already disbanded and they were no longer really relevant. They were fans, but they were fans of a band that no longer existed, so selling the record would just be a money-making scheme for Malcolm McLaren and the designer. So I looked into it a little more, and flogging, apparently, according to British slang, also means selling. So flogging a dead horse would both mean playing off of an existing idea that's already irrelevant, and then also selling that same idea, even though it's irrelevant, and yet people will pay money for it. From what I understand, even though the packaging of that album was very mediocre, intentionally mediocre, and it was called Flogging a Dead Horse, which gave the audience the idea that it was kind of trash, yet it didn't really affect the sales that much, not as much as they thought it would. And in that sense, I think Ava and Franco Montez do kind of the same thing when they're using representations of other people's art, because they're taking the original idea that has already been witnessed by someone and then making a recreation of it, or an identical copy, and that is Flogging a Dead Horse. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching my vlog. I am Greg Krish with CSULB Art 110 class 11A. Thanks again.